In the world of Hollywood, movies get greenlit and redlit. They get remade and rebooted. But we are the Ideal. I'm Sam Gasch, and you are listening to Ideal Remake. Thank you for listening to Ideal Remake. We take movies that either have been, will be, or should be remade and talk about what the ideal version of that remake would be. Today, we're talking about how we know it's the end of the world. Everything's already been done. Every kind of music's been tried. Every kind of government's been tried. Every fucking hairstyle. Bubblegum flavors, breakfast cereal. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna make another 1,000 years? I'm telling you, man, it's over. We used it all up. So, here today to guest on a podcast about remaking movies is a fantasy author who assures me he is quite bullet resistant. Danny Bell.
Bullets, my one weakness.
How did you know? So, Danny, is Strange Days a movie that has been, will be, or should be remade?
Strange Days should be remade. I don't think it has been remade. I think that maybe in the sense of the world got weirdly darker than the movie predicted.
It took a little bit longer than the 5 years that they suggested, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's, they definitely now have cops rolling through streets on tanks, which is a real thing that happens.
Yeah, that was, and part of the conceit of that movie was that one of the darkest things that could happen would be if the police got military equipment. That would never happen.
Yeah, that would be too much equipment.
Yeah.
Oy, this is a movie I had to watch in chunks, which I rarely have to do, but it was one of those things where I had to keep stepping away and going, okay, this is one of the darkest movies we've covered.
Yeah.
It is now one of the dark... When it came out, it was probably like, that'll never happen. Now it is one of the darkest movies we've ever covered.
Right. So that movie came out in 95.
Yep.
And I was still a wee lad. I was a child when that came out. And I remember watching it at the time, and I clearly did not get all the themes at the time. And I was just like, oh, I'm a big, Blade Runner fan. Running Man was great. I kind of liked the idea of the post-apocalyptic future. And I think I was in middle school when that came out, and they were playing it down at the dollar theaters.
Oh yeah.
And I snuck off and I went to go see one. And at the time, I just remembered the idea of oh, virtual reality is cool, right? This, and a lot of for me, it was at the time, it was like a noir detective with VR in the future kind of thing. And this was at a time when the idea of all those ideas were impossible at the time. And I think I didn't pick up on exactly how dark the movie was. In fact, I hadn't seen it in a very long time until we discussed potentially, watching it together. And when I went back to go see it, there was part of me that had immediate regret. I was like, oh no, what have I done?
Because honestly, the VR is not really the part of this movie I focused on. I don't necessarily need to change any of that. It's just oh my god, this world.
Yeah.
This is bad.
Yeah, and part of that, I will say as well, is the movie was, I would say it's 1,000% ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And the people that were involved with it, I think even the people that were involved with, in the making of the movie across the board didn't know what they had. They had James Cameron wrote it, Catherine Bigelow directed it.
Which Catherine Bigelow I knew going in. Mm-hmm. I didn't know James Cameron wrote this movie until I got to the end credits. And then written by James Cameron. I was like, what? What?
The Titanic references didn't clue you in a little bit?
No.
Yeah, James Cameron, has always had ideas about what the future might be.
And a love of the ocean.
Yeah.
True. The ocean will save us all, especially if our limousine's on fire.
Yeah, I was actually talking about coming on this podcast with a friend of mine and talking about the movie. And they were starting to say that even Waterworld was looking a little bit more hopeful than our current day today. We're talking about post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, well, Waterworld is they're coming out on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Plus, you get this great show at Universal.
Yes, and all the sea salt you can taste.
Absolutely. So I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about just the struggle of trying to watch this movie.
Yeah, go for it.
Since I don't think I don't recall an instance of any episode in the show, and I have done some obscure movies where it has not been available online at all. Like, it's eventually, usually my last resort is I'll just go to Amazon and pay the $3 or $4 and watch it there. That wasn't available, not on iTunes, it wasn't on any of the streaming sites. It got to a point where I was gonna watch this movie last night with a friend of mine. I called Amoeba to say, hey, do you guys have a DVD copy? And the guy on the phone said, yeah, is DVD okay? They never re-released it on Blu-ray. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Not freshly out. I'm like, oh no. And so eventually
I might have got your copy, by the way.
Oh, really? Funny. But like, eventually figured out a way to watch it. But like, I almost made a trip down to a Cinephile on Sawtelle to be there when they opened at 11 a.m. this morning to go pick up their only copy of the DVD, to rent it, watch it, and then bring it back before recording.
Yeah, I bought a copy, and I think it was like $40.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's a rare DVD. That's part of it.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not streaming anywhere. It's not being reprinted. If this movie hasn't been re-released on Blu-ray by now, it might not be. And especially because this is a movie that was originally made by Fox.
Right.
It now definitely belongs to Disney, and they may have just kind of thrown it in the vault.
Yeah, that's what I had largely heard, was that there might have been like some rights issues that were holding it up from being re-released and things.
With music? Because it's normally music, but...
Yeah, but I would think even that's a weird thing, because a lot of the music for better and for worse, I mean, that's one of the things we'll get into, I'm sure, but...
Because it's original music.
Yeah, if and when they remake it, and they probably should, they should probably get someone who's not James Cameron to write rap lyrics. That is
true.
That was one of the small points in the movie that pulled me out of it and was like, oh yeah, Jericho 1 is not a realistic rap star.
Yeah, there were a couple moments where like people were rapping and I was like, this isn't... You should have just had this rapper write it.
Yeah.
Give him the content and say go. Like, because Jericho's on my list, and I did cast an up and coming rapper, like someone who was like becoming known for doing exactly that, almost for exactly the same reasons. And I feel like they should be able to do this. Like, you do these movies all the time. Like, you let the artist be artists.
Yeah, I think that Jericho 1's character was supposed to be kind of this weird amalgam of like a, Malcolm X, Tupac, and Bob Marley.
Right.
Like,
and I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The other thing with this movie coming out in 1995 is, for this episode of the podcast kind of feels like a spiritual successor to my episode 3, which was Demolition Man, which also came out around that same time because it kind of was conceived and created just after the LA riots. So it's kind of taking that idea of what was going on then and kind of extrapolating it further. And whereas Demolition Man kind of came away with that, with the idea of, the scary black man, this movie came away with like, well, maybe, but the cops are pretty corrupt, and this is kind of the natural response to the shit some of these people are being put through.
Yeah.
And if anything, this was darker, but also probably a little bit more correct.
It was... So, I'll kind of give a little bit of my, how the movie tied into real life, and I think, what it got not far enough, and how it maybe ended a bit hopeful, before we talk about maybe I think some of the remake stuff. But
yeah,
the things the movie got weirdly right for a movie was, a good example is early on in the movie there is a sex worker that is killed, and when they're talking about, what do we do about it, there's a comment made between, 2 ex-cops, actually 3 ex-cops. Yeah. Tom Sizemore's character was an ex-cop as well, right? Yeah, that was...
I think so.
Yeah, I forgot about that part. Yeah, because he was saying, my old friend's in homicide. And,
yeah.
Yeah, so they were all ex-cops for various reasons, for different reasons. But there is a line where they're talking about, what do we do about it? It's the Iris, his friend Iris.
Right.
And they make the very blatant comment, which is, well, she's a sex worker. They're not going to look into it.
That is, yeah.
And that is that is, terrible, because that is the thing that is still prevalent today.
Right.
It's, and now thankfully we're trying to. There's at least more of a movement now than ever that is trying to decriminalize sex work and normalize it, and as it should. But back then, even in their far look into the future of the year 2000,
Right.
it was the look was it's not whatever, and the ideas of the police being racist and and going unchecked and and being militarized and and all of that. Those are all obvious things for today.
They are, but honestly, you messaged me this on Facebook that they don't quite go far enough, and the honest thing is that you're right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's going on is this sex worker Iris witnesses these two cops just killing the unarmed Jericho 1 because they happen to pull him over, and he ends up being this hip-hop artist, this rapper who was making a big stink, who was being a leader to his people and saying, look, what's happening to us isn't fair. And he gets taken out. But what the movie ends up... And so these two cops basically are stalking Iris, and like all this is happening throughout the movie. But what they end up kind of discovering at the end is that it isn't a systemic corruption within the police force. It's just these two crazy cops, one of whom is Vincent D'Onofrio, which I find very funny.
Yeah, and the other is, I'm blanking on his name. His name is...
William Fichtner?
Fichtner, yeah.
Fichtner.
He's one of those actors who everything I've ever seen him in is amazing. In fact, as a quick aside, if you ever have a chance to watch a movie called Drive Angry,
okay,
it might be my favorite Nick Cage movie. He plays... Well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's going to watch it, but I will say this. Drive Angry is the best Ghost Rider movie ever made.
And
it's
great.
It's not Ghost Rider.
Amazing. But anyway, so they say it's just these two cops and it's not a systemic problem. And the problem is that it is in fact a systemic problem.
Yeah.
You can't have the army, the LAPD, going through the city streets in tanks and then say there's not a systemic problem.
Well, I would argue against that because there were B-roll shots kind of in the beginning where because the riots were happening.
Right.
And there was some shots of random cops being, brutal for no reason. And,
right.
But, I mean, yeah, they weren't flat out murdering. And
then they also have the hero shot at the end where the other cops take down Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, and that is where I think the movie doesn't go anywhere near far enough, is the movie has this idea, which is funny because I understand why they said it. It was at the time, it was after the Rodney King thing, like you were saying, and part of it was, that this happens all the time, but because it was caught on camera this one time, this is what happens. People will rise up and people won't stand for it. And now we see innocent people, particularly people of color, being murdered by the police on camera all the time and getting off on it, getting off for it. Like they don't suffer consequence. So, and that's one major way where the movie says, ultimately people are good and people won't tolerate, this kind of abuse of power. And now we've kind of seen otherwise. There's
this moment where Mace gives a copy of the tape, the tape of the two cops killing Jericho 1 to the head of police. They have a Steckler and they have a Strickland. Strickland's the head of the police.
Yeah.
And they give it to Strickland and she's like, you watch this tape and you'll see. And it's this moment of, oh yeah, he's the good one because he's the one that forced out Nero. And then he is the good one, and it turns out he isn't corrupt, and he's like, yeah, arrest those two cops. I saw the tape. But I don't think that's what would happen in real life.
Yeah, no, there'd be administrative leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even part of that shot is Fichtner's character understands he's going to go to jail and just kills himself.
Right.
And because he's like, well, I wouldn't last in jail, and it's in today's cops, it would be
cops don't do well in jail.
Yeah, but even today, we had we had to have an extreme case recently where a cop entered into the wrong apartment and murdered a man who was just sitting in his own home.
Right.
And even then, the nation seemed to be fairly shocked when she actually got convicted. Right. Because people like Eric Gardner, who were
children.
Yeah. Or Philando Castile.
Yeah.
A lot of these people who who were blatantly murdered on camera, and there was no consequences for the cops. I mean, so when one finally did go to jail, it was a, major. It was a shocking event for some people, which it shouldn't be. But yeah, with this movie, the one of the biggest conceits is, and they make a big deal of it in the movie. They say, "Do you understand what would happen if a video got out of a cop killing an innocent black man? Why, it would destroy everything. It would take down the system.
There would be war."
Yeah. Oh my God. It would implode everything. And it's no, not really. I mean, yeah, which is unfortunate.
Because the real moral dilemma of the movie is, do you release this tape or not? Because if you just release it to the public, you might instigate a war in their world.
Right.
In our world, yeah, you release it because it's the best chance anyone has of seeing justice. Like, there is no moral dilemma now. Now you just release that tape.
Yeah, and it makes for interesting dystopia because,
I think at this point it's just utopia.
Yeah, we do live in the dystopia now. But in terms of the movie, near future, post-apocalyptic, whatever you want to call it, however you would categorize where this movie is at. I think
I would categorize it like IMDb Pro categorizes it, which is an action crime drama.
Now maybe it is because it's more hopeful than real life, but at the time it was set in a dystopic future, I think.
Right, there's a dystopic future of 1999.
Yeah.
4 to 5 years ahead of when this movie was released.
Hey,
they called their shot real hard.
All I'm saying, man, is Mega Man takes place in the year 2000X, so...
That's smarter. Because, you're like, yeah, 2000X. Maybe it could be whenever.
Yeah, we're currently past the Blade Runner timeline, so...
We're past all of it. Yeah. That's why they had to release the new Blade Runner one.
Yeah.
In November, we recorded an episode because it was on Blade Runner because it was happening right now. It was a movie taking place in the present. All things aside, we should actually talk about how we would want to remake this movie. Like, remaking Strange Days right now. How do we restructure the story? How do we adjust it to make it more current? Because this is a movie before cell phones.
Yeah.
And everyone was surprised to find this technology on all these different people.
Well, they did have cell phones in the movie. Remember,
a little bit.
Tom Sizemore was calling on one, and they weren't commonplace, but people did have them. But it was treated like a rare piece of technology.
Right. But what I would do is they kind of have this moment where it's like you have to be wearing this special recording equipment in order to be going through all of this.
The squid.
I would just make that standard. Literally every human being has a squid or something like that. Because that's just what cell phones have evolved into. It's just like a permanently affixed now piece of your body. And it's only people who've downloaded or uploaded this specific app can actually record and hook into their own experiences. So it's something literally everyone has, but then it's just and people can go home at the end of the day and record their entire day so they could relive that day over and over again. It's just then the black market of people who then sell those experiences. Because we already are constantly plugged into technology. It's not a huge leap to be recording our own experiences. That's basically what we do already anyway.
Right. I would say, so one thing that I wouldn't change from the story, but then there's one thing that I would change from it. The one thing that I would not change from the story is that they mentioned that the squids were developed by the FBI to replace,
surveillance.
Yeah, and then black market got out. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that, but there's a lot of things that were developed for military and then just became public. I mean, Velcro.
So
squids are the new Velcro.
What I would say to that, what I would change is, and it's funny because as I was thinking about this movie, I started realizing that Black Mirror actually made an episode.
I'm sure. Black Mirror is always a couple steps ahead of this podcast.
Right. That's part of it, is that the Black Mirror, this actually works more as a Black Mirror episode now than it would as a far-flung movie, because we've already gotten past some of the worst things that Strange Days says, and we're now living in it. And I think that to update it, what I would say is, again, going back to the idea of dystopia, right? Every dystopia is about scarcity, right?
Okay.
You know, like Mad Max is a dystopia about scarcity of gas, right?
And water. Mostly water.
Yeah, gas and water. Mostly water. But you're right. Sorry about that. But yeah, but also gas. Like they're both in short demand.
I feel like yes. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you get the idea is, you know, or Blade Runner is about, you know, the scarcity of humanity.
Right.
They all have their own something is scarce, and so what I would say should be the scarcity in the new one, and kind of goes into how I would make the technology and what I would make it about, is the scarcity of experience. So one of the things that social media does today is, and I think you would agree with this, is people, when they go online, most of the time, most people put their best foot forward.
Yeah.
They always try to make the ideal version of their life on social media. They don't try to share the bad moments, the normal moments, or if they do, it's almost treated as a gimmick thing sometimes.
Yeah.
Wow, can you believe I didn't use a filter for this picture?
Sure.
That kind of thing. I'm not wearing makeup. Isn't that wild? You know, and meanwhile, it's like most of the time people are like,
I will apologize. I did not wear makeup for this podcast. I don't want you to think that means I respect you any less.
I am wearing makeup.
Oh, well.
Yeah, just a little.
I'm flattered.
Just a little blush. No, but what I would say to that is I would still want to make the technology to have evolved to a point where everybody would use it by having the security that is unhackable, right? Because I think that if most people, if the technology of being able to see their daily lives was available, it would be, you know, it would be horrible, right? People would be terrified of that. But if you gave it kind of the same security assurance that people have in, say, blockchain, right? You know, oh, you can't hack Bitcoin.
Sure.
You know, if you were to, and that's a really easy thing to write in. You can just write in, you can even write in as blockchain, right? You know, oh, your security is based on, you know.
I would say the security is secure as long as it can exist within you or within the device. As soon as you take it off the device, you take it out from behind the blockchain wall.
See, what I would actually say...
out of the blockchain link fence.
What I would actually say there is instead of actually having like an external piece of hardware in terms of something on the side of your head or anything like that, or even an implant, I would just make it a very standard thing that everybody has contacts that just kind of like permanently attach to their eye unless something goes wrong and they have to go in and get it taken care of. But then it creates like a heads-up device, and that would be a good visual.
I would give you contacts and a glove.
Contacts and a glove?
Well, you need to... like, you can look at things with your eyes, but you also need to be able to control different, like, elements and switch back and forth between different things.
Well, Google Glass didn't need that, and we've already got to that point. But that was with glasses, not with contacts. But I mean, you know, we were able to, like, you know, look and blink and, you know, like...
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I would say you don't need necessarily a glove. It would just be like contacts, so it's like everybody can just walk around with it, and everybody can just have it.
And there's a lot of like shorts and videos of like kind of like what that kind of world would look like, just a full altered reality world.
Right. So in this movie, they dealt exclusively in memories.
Yes.
And what I would do with this is, because this is just real life where we're at right now, we're at a point where people live stream. You know, people do post their memories, but then people also post, wow, I'm getting ready to go live, and you can live part of this experience with me.
Of course.
And so where the conceit would be in there would be that, you know, not only that are they able to hack memory files, but I would say that, you know, you have your Nero character be someone, because he actually has a line in the movie where he says, hey, you see that guy at the end of the bar? You can be him for the right 20 minutes.
Oh.
You know, I would even have I would take that line and extrapolate it to be, he can let you almost like do a being John Malkovich thing, not that you control the body, but where you just like,
you're in the head.
You piggyback and you see what they see and you experience what they experience.
Right.
And that can even lead to some of the bits about how maybe the wrong person sees the murder, or you know, or the memory file.
But I think that's a good take, because there can be someone. You can literally say there's someone in your eyes.
Yeah.
There's someone in your eyes, and you might not even know.
Yeah. And
that's the scary thing of, no matter what you're looking at, someone else might be looking at that exact same thing too. Which, I can't believe I'm going to do this reference. It's something they do a little bit in Akira Battle Angel. Like, they do the thing where the eyes turn blue, and all of a sudden, Edward Norton is looking down through this person's eyes like he took over the body, but he's taking over the body.
By the way, quick aside, Alita Battle Angel is amazing because it's the story about how Christoph Waltz trains a young robot girl to rollerblade so she can eventually fight Edward Norton. That's just a great premise.
That's a great premise. I would have loved it if it was executed a little bit better, but the important thing is they tried real hard.
If I rollerblade good enough, I can go to the clouds and fight Edward Norton.
It's so 90s. They even have 90s boyfriend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, 90s boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think we're kind of on board with the state of VR and how we would change it.
But the commentary is, I think, is what we need to agree on. Like, why do we have that there? Because I think that what Strange Days was ultimately trying to say was...
Well, I like the idea of escapism. Like, everyone's looking for novelty and wants to have a life that is not their own or experience something that is not their own. Like, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that it would immediately be used for sex is just the internet. Like, that's just how humanity works.
That's true. Yeah, he even has a line in the movie. He says, I could have you skiing in Aspen in 10 minutes, but you look the kind of guy that if you want to ski, you just get in the plane and go ski.
Right.
Yeah. I would say that, I think this is where you get like into the circular bit of it, where I think this is like a good, those who don't remember history are going to repeat it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not that technology is technically circular most of the time, but in this case, I think it calls back to a good thing, which is there was a time where people were terrified of their security, right? People didn't want to say the wrong thing on the phone. People didn't want to, people were afraid of, of the government finding out and all of that. So what would happen is we eventually got to a point where now people will just have an Alexa in their home or an Echo and just talk into it. People put all of their data online.
Yep.
And people aren't as worried about their security anymore. But I think if you made it a lot more personal, i.e. the idea of someone being able to see everything that you see and being able to experience your most intimate moments, that is the kind of security where people would have to be afraid of it again. Yep. Right? At a certain point, it's like, I know your birthday and where you went to school as a little kid. And like, well, that's bad, but that's not the worst.
Right.
As opposed to now, which is...
I know which arm you wash first when you're in the shower.
Exactly. That might give people pause. And then the idea of breaking that security is a good story hook.
Yeah.
The idea of, people being disgusted by it, but also being willing to pay for it.
Well, that's cool, but honestly, that's kind of just like a lot of setup for the movie. The actual plot of the movie is just figuring out who this serial killer is who's taking advantage of this stuff and who's also just like the tension and race relations between these two groups.
Right, which is...
Like I love the technology aspect, and I agree with you, and I think that's important. But I feel like at the end of the day, we have all of this technology, but people are still racist as shit.
Sure. I agree with that, and I think that if you're going to do the updated version of this, race relations are important, but I would almost make it more like in the political and race relations.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like at this point they're kind of part and parcel. Like there's half of the country that acknowledges that we need to work on race relations, and then there's another half of the country that says shut up. Yeah.
And I think that going after, we've had activists today. In Los Angeles where we live, we've had people that have been killed. And it's been sad for 5 minutes and then people move on. I think that you would need to, the figure that you would have to create for this would have to be much larger than life than Jericho 1 was in the movie.
Right. You would have to kind of create an almost shadow rebellion. Like, I'm trying to think of an equivalent movie where there's like a separate group saying, like, let's say Anonymous. Let's say instead of it being Anonymous, it was this other group, and it was a group that just worked for positive social change. Mm-hmm. Their methods aren't always good because it's often violent or whatever, but at the end of the day, they're fighting for equal rights for everybody, and so that people maybe don't get murdered in the street, whatever.
Yeah, I think that if you were to have a... why am I blanking on his name?
Martin Luther King?
No, I was going to say...
Malcolm X?
No, WikiLeaks guy.
Oh, Julian Assange.
Yeah. But if you were to have
But like a good one.
Yeah, if you were to have one that was more about, instead of, international things, but was all about exposing racism and exposing prejudice and exposing bigotry and...
Which is, I think, how it started, and then he got corrupted by his own wealth and power.
That is honestly, there is so much going on there that it is impossible for me to comment on it. I think that there's one of those things where with that particular person, there is so much interest from so many sides and so many people that, either want him propped up or people that want him taken down, that it is really difficult. Like, that's one of those where I have to, like, be neutral on, because I don't know. I don't think anyone knows all the...
Well, one of my clients used to be friends with him, was friends with him kind of before the whole WikiLeaks thing even went down.
Mm-hmm.
And just, like, and she said, like, kind of the more he did, like, the more he just wasn't that guy anymore.
Which I can absolutely believe. I think that, like, every story out there is always told that, power corrupts,
right.
And I think that, at a certain point...
But I think that means that we have our opposing forces. But even that isn't really the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
Because the whole cops versus entire African-American community isn't really even the plot of this movie. That's just the looming threat of these two groups are at odds against each other. And it has just built to a point where people are worried that the small spark will send us into an outside war, just like, not outside war, just a full-on war, and there will be thousands upon tens of thousands of people dead. And that's just something you're going into the movie with, like, oh, okay, we have to be everyone has to be careful because both groups feel this way and both groups are going to keep doing what they're doing because they both believe they're right. But they also know that it's a very careful balance and neither of them wants to... they know that if one group gets completely wiped out, it's because the other group also got completely wiped out. It's a...
Mutually assured destruction,
thank you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what they're dealing with. And then this thing happens.
Yeah.
And it was just... And if you want to have it be like, oh, these two cops in the street, fine, but I don't think so. I think it was... They were, like, trying to take this guy out. But it's this idea that went all the way back up to the top because they are trying to... Like, the evil fascist organization or whatever is trying to take down this, like, kind of resistance leader, like, kind of from the inside out.
There's a line in the movie, and I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to spoil in a 25-year-old movie.
It's all spoilable. say anything you want. We're going to talk about the end of the movie.
Yeah, when Tom Sizemore's character has the line where he mentions death squads.
Right.
I've been hearing about death squads that are going off. And he's lying. But it's a lie that both Nero and Mace immediately believe because it's so believable.
Right.
I think that you're right, which is... I think the thing that I don't change and the thing that I do change are I don't change the scope of the protagonist and the heroes of the movie for what they are, and they're not really heroic, which is more interesting than not.
Yeah, they're anti-heroes. Yeah,
but the scope of the villainy, I think you have to change a little bit because you're right. This is a completely inappropriate movie to reference, but it was one that I was thinking about today. Because I just saw Birds of Prey, and so I was thinking about the other DC movies.
Sure.
And there's a...
it's like a Suicide Squad.
I was going to say there's a line at the end of Wonder Woman that I thought was actually one of the most redeeming parts of that movie, was where after Wonder Woman defeats Ares, and World War II is still going on, and there are still Nazis. And she has that almost breakdown where she's like, I don't understand. They should have stopped fighting. They should have...
Yeah.
And Chris Pine's character, Steve Trevor, has to have that line where he says, I would love to tell you that it's just one bad guy, but it's not, right?
Right.
This is what humanity is, right? There are bad people out there, and they're not limited by cut off the one person, and then that's the end of it. That there are still a lot of bad people. I think that you have to have... You can't even go, I think, even to the root of the issue. You have to just be like, this is just one really bad part. And, you have to do that sort of bit. Where I think that you have to... The person who has to be at the core of it has to be somebody who has the public image of being good.
Yeah.
But they're just one really bad part of one really bad system, to where even if you expose them, it's bad. But there has to be that... I think that this is a strange thing to say, but...
Well, it's Strange Days.
Yay, there you go. That's the title of the movie. Strange Days ends too hopeful.
I tend to agree with you.
Yeah, like the idea is... I think a big theme from the beginning of the movie, one of the big setups, is that the rapture happens at the end of at midnight at 2000, and even the DJ like makes fun of it. He's like, "Well, is that Eastern time or Pacific time?
Right.
When can we expect the rapture?" But
well, I'll pray for you.
yeah, but they referenced it a few times in the movie, which is, hey, relax, the world's going to end in 10 minutes anyways.
Right.
They referenced that the end of the world...
And they don't talk about Y2K at all. This movie's just old enough that they didn't even know about Y2K yet.
Yeah, when they said they were when they said that they were the 2Kers... it was kind of like it had nothing to do with computers. It had everything to do with just like
2000.
Yeah, in the year 2000, that's when it's a fresh start. That's when we're taking back our humanity. As an aside to that,
we were so young.
Yeah, gas is $3 a gallon. Can you believe how bad that is?
Gosh.
But no, what I was saying to that is,
yeah, I would have the ending be similar to the ending that we've got now. And it's fine to think everything's going to be okay. You believe. And all of a sudden they're getting to this car. They've made out. They're about to get in the car. They get black bagged. Credits.
So actually one thing that I would immediately change from the ending, because it was so good up until the very last second. And I hated that it was tacked on.
Yeah, they don't need them to make out.
It is, yeah. With Mace and Nero, there was no romantic tension the entire movie. It was very much friends. It was colleagues. It was mutual respect.
It wasn't. Like, I guessed way early that was going to be a thing.
Because it's a trope, but...
Right.
But they did a good job, for the most part, of not making it overt until just all of a sudden... When they kissed, it took... Even now, knowing that they were going to kiss at the end of the movie, when I rewatched it, it was still jarring. It took me out of the movie. I was like... Oh, yeah, they shouldn't be kissing. There's no reason for them to be romantically interested in each other right now.
They did build up to it. I will give the movie credit that they did keep dropping hints and building up to it. And the actress who played Mace, Angela Bassett, of course, Angela Bassett.
Yeah.
I thought she played it really, really well. Like, at the beginning, when every time Nero went after Faith, you could see that she was being a little bit hurt. Like, I got it. Mm-hmm. We still don't need it.
Yeah.
And I think that I do think it diminishes their characters a little bit. And I'm also fully on board with the idea that not every movie needs to have like a one true romance or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think that a big...
Shippers be damned.
Yeah, if we're gonna talk about really on the nose things of the movie, having Nero's ex be named Faith, and having his whole trek being about reclaiming his faith.
Yeah.
After he's been disillusioned by the department and everything else. A little on the nose.
It is, but I also really like the idea that she's this completely corrupted individual whose name is Faith.
Yeah.
I do enjoy that. Like, I wouldn't necessarily change her name, but, like, drop some of the puns.
I wouldn't change her name, but what I would say to that is that at the end of the movie, you can have it just end with, oh yeah, there's no satisfaction for his love life. There's no satisfaction for any of that. It's just, it's kind of the old, like, if we're going to Greek myth, like, I traveled to the underworld to try to save you and I didn't succeed.
Yep.
That can happen. Like, that's...
Orpheus, baby!
Yeah. Like, I mean, you can have a failure in a character and it makes the story stronger. It makes,
Yeah.
Forget it, it's Chinatown.
Right. So there was this moment at the end where Faith is being arrested. I'm like, why is she being arrested? I'm like, oh yeah, she knew Max killed all those guys. She should be arrested.
Yeah.
Also, we haven't talked about it at all, but we definitely have to talk about how fucked up the murder is. Like, that was like, when I was watching this movie for the first time last night, and I got to
Which one?
When Iris is murdered.
Oh, that was really fucked up.
And I'm like, it's so fucked up that I had to, like, take a break from the movie. And it's like, and then they just kind of like deal with it later, and then that's just how Max has sex with Faith later. And then, like, they do the exact same thing, and Faith looks up and goes, I love you, Max. That is so fucked up. It's, oh my god.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, that's fucked up. Leave it in. It's fucked up. And it's like, oh my god, these are really corrupt characters. But on the other hand, I'm like, that's so fucked up. Like, I'm not in the movie anymore. I'm just reacting to how fucked up that is.
Well, it was great because immediately after that, too, then she tries to save him.
For no reason. If she knows all this stuff about Max, I thought that was a problem. I thought she should have been fully on Max's side, and then something else happens in order to, I feel like Gant or something should have been like, if I go down, I'm taking you with me, kind of thing.
No, I'm a D&D player, man. I like the chaotic characters. Like, that's what that was. That was a character that was like, you can't put me into a box. Like, I will make decisions that are not helpful to the story, but are helpful to me. Like, that is somebody who was that was a complex person. We saw that at one time she did feel something for him, but she treaded that line between love and hate. She was deeply in love with him. She deeply despised him. She tried to help him for just, again, like, she was such a complicated character that actually to me made a lot of sense. Yeah, I will try to...
All right, fine.
I will try to hurt you, and then I will try to save you. And you know what? Fuck you if you think you're going to try to figure out why. Like, that's...
All right, fine. Fair enough. Then I will at least say this. Nero is stabbed in the back, and then people, like, hug him and pat him on the back, and he does a bunch of shit, but he has lost a lot of blood. He should be done.
He should, and it's a funny thing.
And they keep patting his forehead like he hasn't been stabbed in the back.
Yeah, and part of that as well was...
I'm sorry, wait. Metaphor. Go on.
I have to say this, by the way. Ralph Fiennes looks eerily like Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, my immediate first choice is like, well, we could just give it to Bradley Cooper. I'm like, no. No, because he looks like Bradley Cooper the whole movie.
He really does. Like it's funny because you think about 1995 and you're like, ah, yes, the young, sexy Ralph Fiennes and Angela Bassett and Tom Sizemore and Juliette Lewis.
Yeah.
Like, all these people. And a side note, the character that played Philo, actually two people that from when I was a kid and I watched it, and I grew up for some reason thinking they were different actors. I thought Philo was Heath Ledger for some reason.
Oh, weird.
I grew up just thinking, I was like, yeah, Heath Ledger was in that movie, and he wasn't. And Jericho 1, I thought was Charlie Murphy for some reason.
Weird.
Yeah, and I watched it, and I was like, oh, that's not who they are at all. But Philo's character does look like Heath Ledger a little bit in this movie.
His face is too long. Heath Ledger, I've always thought of kind of having like a square, kind of like rounded square face, and this guy had like a full longish, like oval face.
Yeah.
But anyway, we need to actually talk about like a couple other plot points.
Sure.
Like Philo.
Yeah.
He's just like a crime boss. He's a crime boss who I think respects the balance between these two things, and he realizes that he has something that could disrupt the balance and ruin his entire business. That honestly made sense to me. Like, he honestly got bit in the butt by his own crazy paranoia, and now he's just desperately trying to bury his own crazy, like, the thing that he found. He's like, no, I found the wrong thing. I uncovered the wrong secret. Like, I was on board with that, because I feel like I totally agreed with it.
It's funny, something you said just now, like, just sparked something in me that I was like, I think I might have figured out what part of the scarcity was in this movie. And I think what part of the scarcity would have been trust. Because again, Philo was very paranoid, but people didn't trust the police. People didn't trust.
It's a movie about paranoia. Like, they kept saying everyone you need to be more paranoia.
Yeah.
You need to be more paranoid.
Yeah.
Avoid the noid. Yeah. Avoid the paranoid.
Hey.
But
by the way, is the paranoid like a ghost version of the Domino's mascot?
Yes.
Okay, good.
He ruins ghost pizza.
Ah.
Those toppings.
The memory of pizza.
Yeah. I gotta give you a second.
Go for it.
The paranoid will ruin all pizzas with pepperoni and mush booze. It was worth it. The time we took. I'm gonna leave all that space in there.
I'm gonna let you have that one.
Okay.
By the way, since you're gonna do that, I'm gonna mention a random thing from like last night.
Okay.
I will say this, by the way. A lot of the actors in this movie, even like the lesser known ones, I was really impressed by.
Everyone in this movie did a fantastic job.
Yeah. One actor that I will stand by till I die, that I think is one of the best, that never got his due, was Nicky Katt. He's one of those character actors that I am a gigantic fan of, and he's been in so many good movies. He was in
He's in this. He plays Joey Corto. Who was Nicky Katt in this movie?
He was the green shirted goon that was like making the jokes, the really bad jokes.
Okay.
Remember, he was the one where he says, "We tried to get a smaller woman to beat you up, but it was really short notice." And he goes, get it? Sure. It's a really bad joke, but the way he delivers those lines, like he comes across menacing and
insane.
Cheesy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a meth head who thinks he's funnier than he actually is. But he is someone who he has done so many great movies where he is a side character, like a minor character. I think the movie where he's most prominent was actually Boiler Room, which weirdly enough had like Giovanni Ribisi and Vin Diesel.
Yeah, the three things he's known for when you pull him up on IMDb Pro are Boiler Room, Dazed and Confused, and Sin City.
Really? I would give him over that. I would give him...
It's not a perfect system.
He was also in that movie with Robert De Niro about Alaska, Insomnia.
Yeah, I could see Insomnia, Speakeasy, Waking Life, The Way of the Gun, Rules of Engagement, Boiler Room, The Limey, Mutiny, Say You'll Be Mine, Delivered. He's in a lot of things.
Way of the Gun was great too. He's one of those character actors that the more I'm like, yeah, he's a great actor.
Yeah,
weird one.
We're getting off topic.
Yeah.
So, but like in terms of the criminal organization of Philo, I agree with the way that kind of structured and worked because it made sense. He's carved out a little niche for himself, and all-out war will ruin that for him, so he's willing to protect it, but he kind of got in his own way.
Yeah, he's the nightclub owner from, like, every noir,
like,
detective story. He's not... you think he's the main bad guy, and he's not. Like, he's actually set up in this movie as the antagonist. You think that until he just randomly dies. When he's, like, dead, you're like, oh, wait.
Well, that, at the end of the day, is kind of my... It's that, at the end of the day, there really is no big main antagonist. Because Philo kind of gets taken out... I guess it's Max. Max ends up being the big villain. But, like, it's not... But it's not really Max. It's not really Philo. It's not even really those two cops. And I feel like, kind of, the big villain needs to be... someone who's kind of been pulling the strings or seeing what was going on the whole time, and that's what we really reveal at the end with like them getting black bagged and taken away.
Well, and that was also with with Max getting his wig pulled off, and he realized that he had a squid on as well, and there was somebody above him.
No, because like he had a squid on because he's constantly recording his entire life.
Yeah, but
he's a wirehead.
But I thought the implication too was that somebody else was like watching his stuff, because he just had the whole, getting Nero to confess to things as well a moment prior.
I can see where you're coming from with that. That is not the impression that I got. I didn't think anyone else was watching. I just felt like, because they kept referring to this thing where this dude is just constantly like recording all these things, and it's super weird, and it's just like gets off on his own his own videos.
Yeah, I think that if you want to do, kind of going back to the idea of Wonder Woman's, ending, which is it's not just one bad guy kind of thing. I think that if you do a remake for this, what you do there is you have them have a very hollow victory.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you exposed one guy and you expect things to change, and you actually give a little bit of like room to breathe, where you end up seeing that ultimately their struggles and trying to defeat this one person who seems so important, or solve this one event, or solve this one murder that seems so important, really has no impact either way if they had succeeded or failed.
Right.
And I think that doing that would give the movie a much more of a downer effect than everything else, but it would make for a better ending. It would make for a Black Mirror ending.
Yeah, which I think is what it needs. But okay, all right. So I think we've kind of talked around it long enough. Let's get into casting.
Sure.
I feel like we obviously need to start with Lenny Nero. I will preface this by saying the way the movie is initially set up is the way Strange Days is right now is that there are the white people and then there are the black people. Mm-hmm. Those are the only races there are. And so what I try to do with some of the characters that are a little bit more in the gray, I made other kinds of people. So I did that a little bit here and there, but I was like, let's make it not just... Because that happens so much with these kinds of things. It's like, it's the black community and the white community. And, oh, look at this. There's the Yakuza's here as well a little bit. Yay! But, like, I wanted to make it a little bit more of a melting pot. So I tried to spread it around a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say to that, too, that a big part of that is why are the characters... Is there a reason for the characters being a race that they are in the movie? Like, for example, Jericho 1 had to be black.
Yeah,
because...
there's two characters I think needed to be black. Mace, Jericho 1, as far as I'm concerned, those are the two that need to be. Everything else was kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
And I made the two cops white because I do think they should be white.
Well, they were also German. Like, they were both German characters. I think that, that was supposed to be intentional, like the Stormtrooper.
I missed that.
They were the...
That's less important to me.
But I think that's what they were going for in the original movie was...
I guess. They also have this moment where, like, Vincent, like, who's his face shoots, William Fichtner shoots himself in the mouth, and then the Vincent D'Onofrio character is, like, devastated by it. On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, he's sad about his friend. But on the other hand, I'm like, but part of me was like, oh, they were gay.
Yeah, I think they were.
And I really want that to be true. Not because I think it has any merit for the movie, but because I think it makes these two characters a little bit deeper. Especially because it's like, it doesn't necessarily say anything. It's just like, these two people found each other. They're both monsters, and they were both into the exact same thing, but somehow they found each other, and it's just like, it adds a little bit of tragedy in their death, I guess, but like, I don't know, I just found it interesting.
Yeah, I think that it's always a hard lesson for people to remember. They have to learn it over and over again, which is bad people can have positive aspects to their lives. Like, they can...
Not that there's inherently a positive aspect to just being gay.
But no, I was not the gay part. I was saying, like, the positive part is, having genuine affection for somebody else.
Right.
For having to be able to fall in love. Like, not all villains are like...
Well, every single human being is going to be three-dimensional.
But in a lot of movies, a lot of the trope is, the bad guy doesn't necessarily care about, anyone else but himself. But
right.
The hero is willing to feel pain and emotion for the death of a loved one. And in this, it was very much... You're right, it wasn't overstated. But the emotion from Vincent D'Onofrio's character, seeing his buddy or lovers, whatever it is...
Partner, we can just leave it at partner.
Seeing his partner kill himself, he had a genuine reaction, which was, disbelief and rage and pain and which he would have if he was a three-dimensional person, and that was somebody he cared about, just killed himself. But in a lesser movie, it would have been I can't, you won't take me too. Instead of it was like, because you pushed him to this, now I'm going to get my revenge on you. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had another thing, but I don't remember. So anyway, let's talk about casting.
Sure.
So, would you like to go first for Nero?
For a modern day Nero. So I think that if you're going to have Nero in this movie, you almost need someone who is just slimy enough that they kind of fell to that point.
Maybe. I was thinking, because you can make anyone slimy. I feel like think Nero's defining characteristic is his charisma and his charm.
Right.
And unfortunately, he's fallen into a situation where, like, in the same thing that got him kicked out of the police force, is he fell into a situation where charisma and charm isn't enough.
Yeah, I think that you need to have somebody that would be believable as a cop, but then also believable as somebody who is no longer a cop.
Yeah. So who did you have?
I mean, it's almost a joke casting, but I would almost go like a Chris Pratt if you want to give him a more serious role. Like that guy.
I don't want to cast actual assholes, though.
Fair enough, but he is somebody who is like, he tries to be over charming and it doesn't always land, and you could see how he would try to talk his way out of every situation.
Sure. So the person that I went with is an actor named Steven Yeun, who is in Okja. He's in the upcoming Invincible. He's in Sorry to Bother You. I think you should leave.
Yeah.
He is an actor who's done kind of the drama. He's clearly a very attractive guy. He's the right age, and he's South Korean, so it kind of puts him like a little bit in the middle of these two groups. Like, he doesn't necessarily have loyalty to one side or the other. He's just kind of doing his own thing, man. And so that's why I thought Steven Yeun.
That's a really solid choice.
So for me, that brings me to Mace. I'll go first for this one.
Sure.
For Mace, you need someone who is kind of the action, who has the emotions, and is able to, like... I feel like Mace's characterization is in her subtlety. And, like, the first time you look at her, like, you just read the one thing, but the more you pay attention to, the more you're like, you realize all the layers she's playing. And Mace also is one of the characters who needs to be black. So I went with kind of an A-lister right now. I think this is my one real A-lister from this list. I went with Lupita Nyong'o.
Okay.
Because she's an amazing actress, but she can also do the action stuff and is just an incredibly compelling person that, like, it's same with Mace in this movie is you're also perfectly willing to see a movie about her life. Like, there's that moment where Mace is driving away and Nero goes, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she's like, this is just my life. Let me do my job. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, okay. She's super interesting. And so that's why I thought Lupita Nyong'o would be a good choice. I
have one, and I won't forgive you if you have to look her up. But Jessica Nicole would be my choice.
I don't know who that is. Tell me about her.
Jessica Nicole, I mean, what I would pick her for would be less for her action stuff and more for her range and delivery. She was on that show.
Fringe?
Yes, Fringe. She was in Fringe. She also did Alice Isn't Dead, the horror podcast that was done by the Night Vale people. She's done a bunch of smaller roles as well. But she is somebody that every time I see her in, every emotion that she has, every bit of her range is 1,000% believable. And even in Fringe, she had 2 different roles, because there was the alternate version Earth of her, which was militarized, and the normal version Earth of her, which was, just a very sweet research assistant.
Sure, we can go with her. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm a big Jessica Nicole fan.
Cool. All right, then that brings us to Faith. Faith is an interesting one, so go ahead.
So with Faith, I think you need to have somebody that can pull off the believable sweet, but then also, believable asshole. And
absolutely,
my pick for that would be Britt Lower.
Britt Lower?
Yeah, another person I'm a big fan of. She's done, again, like, I think, smaller things necessarily. She was in Man-Seeking Woman as the sister. She was in Future Man for a couple seasons. Yeah, she's someone who I don't think has ever really got like a big breakout starring role, but somebody who if you've seen Future Man?
I watched the pilot and then never went back to it.
Oh, you should. It's great. Or did you see Man-Seeking Woman?
I watched the pilot and then didn't go back to it.
That's another big shame. Man-Seeking Woman is magical realism done right in a modern setting.
I don't find Eric Andre that funny, and his presence in that show kind of turned me off of it.
I will say this is, not getting off track, but Man-Seeking Woman has I think one of the all-time perfect series finales endings. Like
I've heard that it is a good show and it goes very well. There's so much I just haven't had the time.
Yeah, so what Britt Lower's characters bring in kind of both those examples is in Future Man, she is set up as being a great love interest for the protagonist, and then you kind of realize, oh, actually, she's pretty shitty. And then in Man-Seeking Woman as well, she's someone who is supposed to be like a moral voice of reason, then occasionally just goes off and does some really shitty things, and then is indignant about them, and is someone who is able to. Yeah, I would look up her acting as well. She's really good.
So the person that I have is someone who has been in some good things recently, but has also been in some real stinkers. When I went for Faith, I was like, I need someone who is a believable asshole. Like, you look at her and you go, yeah, you might be a jerk, but I also would believe that you're also very sweet. I get it. Mm-hmm. But someone who could just conceivably play someone who kind of toes that line. I also needed someone who could sing and had a little bit of that punk aspect to it. So I went with Cara Delevingne.
Okay.
Just because, like I said, she's been in some real stinker movies. Like Suicide Squad and Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets. They're not good. But up until recently, I'd kind of like dismissed her as an actress. But I saw some interviews with her and she's charming. Mm-hmm. But everyone is saying that she's fantastic in the new show Carnival Row. And that's like the sort of character...
Who does she play in Carnival Row?
She's the fairy.
Oh, the main one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's fantastic in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wanted to be certain, but before I kind of said anything. But yeah, she's amazing in that. She's a great actress in that.
Right. So because of that, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, she can do other things. Mm-hmm. And I just like this idea of her being someone who could kind of play either side of that line.
Yeah, I would think that you have a really solid choice there. I mean, I like Brit Lower as well, but I think yours is probably better.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about Max. My Max is a left field choice a little bit.
All right.
Because what I leaned into was someone who's a little bit more on the comedic side, who you absolutely cannot expect the turn. Where with Max in this movie, I'll be honest, I suspected it a little bit. There are a couple of moments where he just isn't that affected by this ridiculous, horrific, awful murder. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, that was really bad. So what are we gonna do about it? Whereas Nero vomits and both him and Tick are
well, it's Ralph Fiennes. Come on,
right? But so Max, I leaned into a little bit more of the comedic because you think he's just kind of the bumbling guy. I was like, yeah, I got hired to guard this woman, whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not big, but I can hold a gun. And so that's why I went with someone who has kind of that comedy background and has been in Veep and Arrested Development. But I've also seen him do drama stuff, and he's really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. Tony Hale.
So I mean, yes, Tony Hale can do both drama and serious, and yes, I think that's a really interesting pick. I think I might give you a run for your money in this one, though.
All right. I went left field. You went right field.
No, I think I also. Well, yeah, I think I might have went right field. I will tell you the show that put it over the edge for me. It was a show on Hulu called Chance. It had Hugh Laurie as the protagonist, and the main supporting role went to this character, Ethan Suplee.
I have no idea who that is. I've never heard that name.
You know who that is. I think he's someone you're going to see his face and you're going to go, oh, I know exactly who that is. Comedic,
sort of?
Comedic wise, he goes all the way back to Mallrats. He was in My Name is Earl. And he always did these comedy roles where he was the big lumbering guy who played kind of the sweet but dumb character. Nowadays, he's actually absurdly jacked. He was always this giant of a man before that, but now he actually got in really good shape. But in Chance,
oh yeah, okay, I can see. I'm looking at a picture of him now from My Name is Earl, and that is a very different picture of him than the one that is currently on IMDb, which is him jacked.
Yeah, in the show Chance, though, he played a legitimately terrifying character that kept me guessing. Chance was, I think, one of the best examples in modern history of a good show about tension.
Okay.
And his ability to keep me guessing in that show and his ability to constantly frighten me with what he was capable of in that show, I think makes him a great choice for this, because he's somebody who it comes naturally to him to be the good, fun, jovial giant friend who could, on a turn of a dime, become terrifying.
Great. Works for me.
Yeah.
Ethan Suplee.
What's the scorecard so far?
2-2, but it doesn't really matter.
But who's counting?
I mean, we've only done 4 things.
Yeah.
That brings me to Philo Gant.
Ooh, I have an amazing choice for this.
Go ahead.
Jeffrey Donovan.
Tell me about Jeffrey Donovan.
Oh, I love Jeffrey Donovan. He's another one of those character actors he's been in a million things, and he plays a different person every time. The most recent movie he did was with Bill Skarsgård called Villains, and that was a fantastic movie that went under everyone's radar. The thing he's most known for is that USA show Burn Notice.
Yeah. He did 111 episodes.
Yeah, he was fantastic in that. I love Burn Notice. But he was also he played Bobby Kennedy in that one movie. He's in JFK as Bobby Kennedy, I think.
Okay.
He's got fantastic range. He was in that movie with Angelina Jolie called Changeling, where he played the cop who didn't want to admit they got the wrong kid back.
Jesus.
He's got fantastic range. He's another one of my all-time favorite character actors. But he is somebody who... there's another movie. Since you have your IMDb up, you can probably pull it up. He was in a movie that had... It was the guy that was Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones. And
Lucy in the Sky, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, Sicario, Shot Caller, LBJ, Other Sicario, Extinction, J. Edgar, Hindsight, Believe in Me, Come Early Morning, Hitch.
Sicario was the movie with... I'm blanking on his name too. The guy was Punisher.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. He played weirdly enough like a neo-Nazi in prison in that movie, and he was terrifying in that too. But his energy in that was very much the low key kind of scumbaggy, believable as a like, he looks like he shouldn't be that tough, but then don't cross him at all. Like he has that sort of, he's somebody who he can play anything, but especially in the most recent movie Villains that he was in, he really showed that he can play the guy that is supposed to look like he's charming and nice and can get downright evil. Villains had him as a... I really don't want to spoil Villains, but I will say this. It had him as a very idyllic 1950s almost looking, man of the house.
Uh-huh.
Why, sure, son, come on in. Have a lemonade. A Bing Crosby looking guy who is downright sadistic later on and evil.
Well, here's the thing, because I think we should expect kind of that sadistic evil, but I feel like at the end of the day, he's really kind of just like a low-key mob boss. Like, he's a bad guy, but I wouldn't put him at, like, serial killer level.
No, but he does strike faith. Like, he gets physical.
He's a bad guy. He is bad. But, so what I went for a little bit more is a little bit more Agent of Chaos. Like, I want someone who can play the comedy, like, who can be legitimately funny, and then 5 seconds later, you're feeling bad that you laughed at his joke. Because he is a legit bad guy, but, like, plays around with the idea of, like, perceptions of morality and, like, oh, well, right now it's fine, we're having fun. Hey, are we having fun? Kill him. And so that's why I went with Wilmer Valderrama, who, from that 70s show.
Yeah.
But he also was in, like, 80 episodes of, like, NCIS.
Yep.
So he also is jacked. But, like, also has this aspect of a little bit... You don't know what he's gonna do. Like, he's a little bit more like, oh, wait, it's that... Wait. And, like, there's that just little bit of disconnect of... Because with Jeffrey Donovan, you're like, oh, the way you'll have Jeffrey Donovan set up is you'll look at him and go, yeah, that's a bad guy.
Well, he's also played, like, the stalwart heroes. He's played both.
Right. Like, he's got the chiseled jawline and that whole thing. And to be fair, Wilmer Valderrama is also very attractive. But, like, he's also a little bit shorter. And I just think it's...
Look up a still from him in Villains real quick. Like, look up his character in Villains.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it's one where you could see he has that look of he can go either way.
Sure. All right, fine. If you'd like, we can come back to this.
Yeah, that's a toss-up, I think.
Let's talk about the two cops.
Sure.
Do you have people for both cops?
I think you can kind of plug a lot of people in there. I think what you do there is...
I cast two white boys who've been in, like, action-y stuff, who you could see being friends. So I went with two people who you could see being friends, and then, like, maybe, I don't know, who knows? I made one a little bit younger, one a little bit older, but I actually think they're roughly the same age, just one plays a little bit younger, one plays a little bit older. And so I went with Dane DeHaan and Aaron Taylor-Johnson. Dane DeHaan is the kid from Chronicle.
Okay.
And Aaron Taylor-Johnson is Kick-Ass, and he was in the new Godzilla movies, and he actually comes up a lot on the show, but, like, he's good. And, like, you can see him being, like, the nice, clean-cut cop type.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, you could just see him, like, getting really angry. He's like, no! I'm in charge! Like, one of those. And because with the movie as we had it now, it was kind of... Vincent D'Onofrio was kind of the lead of the two. But with this one, I'd kind of like to see it go back and forth of, like, one being the slightly younger one who's a little bit more impulsive, and the other one who's a little bit more menacing. Like, the bigger guy one. And I think it's important that they both be white, and these two are very white.
Okay, so I think I actually have my two for the cops.
Okay, who are they?
I would go Jesse Plemons and Jimmy Simpson.
Jesse Plemons and Jimmy Simpson.
Yes.
Jesse Plemons is the dude from Breaking Bad, right?
No, he is the not Matt Damon guy. You know what I'm talking about? He was in the USS Callister episode of...
Jesse Plemons is great.
Yeah, him, and he's very white, and he's got the blonde hair. And Jimmy Simpson... He was in the O.J. Simpson TV thing, but he was also... He's been in a million things, but he was most notable in, like, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as one of the... the inbred brothers.
You just picked him because I said Dane DeHaan.
Actually, I picked him because I started thinking of Jesse Plemons first, and then I remember that Jimmy Simpson was also in that episode of USS Callister, and I was like, actually, those two work well on screen together.
Jimmy Simpson... Did you watch Psych at all?
I did.
That's where I first saw Jimmy Simpson.
Yeah.
The guy who investigates serial killers.
Yes.
Between Jesse Plemons and Jimmy Simpson, pick one.
Jimmy Simpson.
Okay.
He's more of a white guy cop, I think.
Then we'll go with Jimmy Simpson and Aaron Taylor Johnson, because Jimmy Simpson's a good replacement for Dane DeHaan.
So then, if we're going class, and we're actually going to go the way of you can actually have a person of color who is comfortable screwing over poor people of colors because they're poor as opposed to whatever else. My new choice there then would actually be Jeffrey Wright.
Who's Jeffrey Wright?
Jeffrey Wright was in Westworld. He's been in a whole bunch of things. He was in...
Okay, Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah. But he has a lot of that, like, very... You expect him to be, the smart character, but can on a dime, appear very menacing and very kind of shitty. I think that, him in that role of... Like, that would actually... I think that'd be a good role, I think.
He's a very good actor. I like him a lot, but I'm trying very hard to pick someone who is neither white nor black.
Then I will defer to your Walderrama.
Yeah.
I think, though, that, like... And this is, pulling politics into this,
right.
Modern politics. A thing that recently happened that was a big, it was a big, for 5 minutes, it was a big thing, was when, like, Kamala Harris was running for president.
Right.
And one of the things that tanked her entire campaign was when it was called out, hey, but you disproportionately jailed black people, and you... laughed about smoking marijuana while incarcerating people
putting
of color.
A lot of people away for... Oh, she did that on, like, Joe Rogan or something. Or she did that... Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we're going... That's where I think they got the Jeffrey Wright from, because I was like... Part of that was that she very much tried to play up, yeah, but I'm black. And it was like, people were like, that almost makes it worse, because you know what the struggle was, and you still did a lot of these things.
I would do exactly that. Like, I would make Jeffrey Wright Strickland.
Okay.
Which I didn't cast, but I feel like he'd be perfect for Strickland.
Sure.
Like, you make him the head of the police force.
Yeah, if you're going the route of...
Like, if that's what you want, that's where you put him.
Yeah, if you're going to go the route of, like, nothing was really solved, that kind of thing, and there's corruption all the way down the line. Yeah, Jeffrey Wright as Strickland would be a good pick.
Cool. Then I have 3 people left. I have Jericho 1, Iris, and Tick.
Okay.
Do you have anyone beyond those?
Jericho 1.
Do you have anyone beyond those 3 characters?
Nicky Cat should come back and play his character again.
Okay, so then we'll just do those 3.
No one will notice. It'll be fine.
I know. So then let's talk about Jericho 1. Jericho 1, as I alluded to earlier, I cast an actual up-and-coming rapper from Louisville, because I think we should have an actual rapper or hip-hop star. And I cast this one specifically, because his background is I thought, good. Because he literally came from a very, very poor family. He's like, look, the way we're being treated and the way the society is right now is effed up. And also because his rapper name is so perfectly on the nose for what we're doing here that I literally stopped looking at the list of people I was dealing with.
Okay.
His name is 2K, baby.
Wow. So I will say this. My character, the person I had in mind, was not a rapper and is nowhere near as perfect as that. So I'm almost afraid to even say it. I'm almost inclined just to give you that one.
All right. Then let's move on. Then tell me about your Iris.
As a quick aside, I have to say this. It was funny because I tried looking up all the where are they now type people for this going forward.
Sure.
And I looked up Iris and I was like, because her performance, it was actually, the person who was in it was named Bridget Bako, the actress. And she really impressed me in this. I thought she was amazing. And I was like, how have I not heard of more things from her? And it turns out she stopped acting like 11, 12 years ago. And she didn't really do a whole lot after this movie anyways. And according to...
Because this one must have been so fun.
Yeah. And according to... Well, I mean, she did a TV show for many years after that. And then that was the last thing she did. She stopped acting in 2009. But apparently, according to her Twitter, half of her Twitter is about how she wants to hook up with Bruno Mars, and the other half is about how she wants to sell diamonds. And then she just stopped posting. So
that's a deep cut reference thing.
That is a folk song in there somewhere.
This poor woman.
the Fall of Bridget Bako is a song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Iris is it's one of those roles I almost feel bad casting, knowing what happens to her in the movie.
Yeah, that's why I toughened up the character a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, someone who is a prostitute on the streets is gonna have to be a little bit tougher than like, oh my gosh. That felt a little bit more like a kept woman, as opposed to someone who was living in this world and this society.
And was that tough, honestly. She got away from the cops, and she was trying to... She even came... Honestly, give her a little credit for her agency. She had the foresight to plant evidence in the one person's car who she knew... You know, she's like, hey, I'm getting chased. I have a backup plan.
There's a good chance I'm going to be murdered. Let's try to cover as many bases as possible.
Yeah, her character deserves a little more credit in that movie.
Yeah.
She was, honestly, she was maybe one of the smartest characters in the movie. She died.
That's true.
She died, but she actually was fairly smart about, she knew when to run. She knew...
and even though she died, at some point after going to that hotel, she got a gun. Yeah. She didn't have it on her in that exact moment, but like...
She went for it.
She went for it, and if she'd had an extra second, she'd be fine.
Yeah, the movie wouldn't have happened. But she even had... keep in mind, she got away from the two cops who nearly killed our protagonist.
Right.
In dramatic fashion.
Like, Iris deserves more credit.
Yeah.
So who did you have?
Oh my god. This is not one that I had thought about coming in. This is not one I expected to have to cast. So I'm going off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, the others I had thoughts in mind coming into this. I was like, here's who I think would be good here. This is one that I'm having to go off the top of my head. And
if you don't have someone, it's fine. Like, that's why I asked if you had other people, because there'll often be characters that I don't cast that the other person does. I'll often cast characters that the other person doesn't. Don't worry about it if you don't have someone for this.
Yeah, I'd let you cast that one. That's a difficult one for me to cast.
So my actress is named Bess Roos or Bess Rue. I'm not sure. She was on Law & Order SVU. She was in the new Ghostbusters movie. But I really know her from the TV show Other Space, which no one watched, but I love and I'll pull from all the time because it's great. And she played kind of the hard-ass sister to... Like, the two leads were like this brother-sister, and she was the sister. And she was the one that was like, strict, by the book, this is what we're going to get done. And I just thought she was good. I like her. I thought that, like, she was able to get shit done, and I thought she would be good for this role as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it would be like, she would put up a fight before getting murdered, but, like, she would be fighting the entire time.
Yeah. Which
I would be more interesting to me than just like, it was so bad. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's who I thought for Iris.
That was the roughest part of the movie, I think.
Easily.
Yeah.
And then they bring it back later, and I'm like, oh, and that's pretty bad also. Like, when they, like, the callback to it, that's also really, really bad. So my tick, which is the kind of guy who's, like, getting the tapes and, like, making copies and whatever... Mm-hmm. That I went with an actor who I also saw in Other Space, but he's also in Mandalorian. He's in The Good Place. He plays Pillboy on Good Place. He's one of the krill farmers on Mandalorian.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's a fantastic pick. Jason, right?
No.
The guy that plays Jason?
No.
Oh, no, Pillboy. Oh, sorry, you're the other guy. Yeah.
Eugene Cordero.
Yeah. Eugene
Cordero, because like he also can play this character who's like just off. He's like, what you doing there, buddy? Yeah. And I just thought he'd be a fun pick for this. And then you'd be sad when he died.
Yeah. That's a really solid pick, too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then let's talk about our writer and our director. Do you have a writer-director, or do you have a separate writer and director?
Separate writer and director. I'll let you go first.
Okay. Let's talk about writer first. For writer, I thought it was important to have a black writer on this. And so I wanted someone who kind of like had experience writing like kind of the crime stuff, but also kind of the action stuff. So I went with someone who wrote Black Panther and also worked on American Crime Story, because those kind of fit. So it's a writer named Joe Robert Cole. I just thought would be able to kind of like do kind of this mix and match of kind of like, would really be able to understand kind of the tension present in all of this. And that makes sense. And that's why I thought he would be a good choice for this.
It's funny you say that, by the way. My director choice was actually Ryan Coogler from Black Panther as well.
Fair.
Yeah.
I went with a black writer and a female director.
Okay.
Because with the way one of the things we didn't talk about is because Catherine Bigelow directed this movie, it's not particularly male-gazy, and we are literally gazing through the eyes of males. Like, there's definitely, like, a bunch of boobs in this movie, but, like, it didn't feel lecherous.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought she did a good job, and so that's why I wanted a female director again.
Okay.
But anyway, tell me who your writer is.
So my writer is actually Ava DuVernay.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used her a bunch of times. Tell me about Ava DuVernay, for anyone who is unfamiliar with her.
Did I get her name wrong?
I think it's pronounced Duvernay.
Okay.
There's a chance I'm wrong as well. I'm bad with that.
I mean, I always hate getting names like that wrong.
Oh, it happens to me all the time. Like, unless I hear it out loud, don't worry about it. Tell me about her.
I mean, she recently did When They See Us.
Yeah.
If you saw that.
Mm-hmm.
And for the subject matter of this movie, I thought that was actually a solid, like, if you're going for the frame of reference of the very real idea of race in a movie.
I think Ava DuVernay is an excellent choice.
Yeah.
I don't think she's ever done much action. But
well, that's why I have Ryan Coogler as the director, because you have the action there.
Let's go with Ava DuVernay for the writer, but then let me tell you about my director. I wanted someone who kind of like, because it feels like a militarized zone, so I wanted someone who's kind of done like kind of those war movie things. Like this is a director who did Zero Dark 30. She also did something called Homicide: Life on the Street.
Okay.
So like she did things very much like this. She also directed something called Hurt Locker and something called Strange Days. I went with Catherine Bigelow again.
Really? I thought that was against the rules.
Not at all. Because she's still a very active director and she's still doing things like this. And I'm more interested in seeing what her take, like, because
what her take now would be. Yeah,
especially because after this, I feel like this kind of made her more radicalized and more aware of these things. And I want her now, like, now that she's seen the world from having done Strange Days, I want her to go back to this and be like, okay, Strange Days again, because, like, I now know it better, and we can kind of do that same take again, and we can still get that same flavor. And now she's, like, been to war and seen how wars go.
Yeah, if anything, she's far and away a much better director now than she was then.
I agree.
But I would also say, too, I wonder if that would almost be, like, too depressing. If you were like, hey, remember when you directed this movie about, like, the terrible future of the year 2000? Yeah. Well, remember how things got, like, a lot worse?
Yeah.
Make it again.
Yeah. That's why I think it's even more so. Like, right? Like, all the talkbacks of, like, yeah, I really thought that was as bad as it was going to get, but nope.
Yeah, that just kind of feels like...
Yeah.
I'm picturing Catherine Bigelow just, like, putting a hand in her forehead and just going, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I want.
I'm okay with yours. Yeah, I think yours is... I'm okay with your director.
Cool. So then my last question for you is, in what year would you set this?
Again, I'd go Black Mirror. So I would be, like, in the year, like, 2030. Maybe, like, 10 years from now.
10 years from now? I was thinking 2025, but let's go with 2030 to be safe.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, 5 years will go quick.
Yeah. All right, 2030. I'll settle for 2030.
The reason I go 10 years in the future is because it gives us the chance. Like, we're coming up on an election very soon.
Yes.
And we're hopefully, like, kicking a Nazi out of office.
God, I hope to God we do.
And, I mean, so the future of the country in terms of, I think, heavily in terms of, like, things like race relations and things will depend on what happens this year.
Yeah.
For anyone who's listening to this podcast in the future, we are recording this in the year 2020.
Yeah.
So I think that, but again, best case scenario, we're talking about 8 years, right? 2 years after that is, well, what happens then, right? Yeah. Do we regress again? Because we've done this. We've gone the rubber band. We've had the, things were really bad, and things got really good, then things got really bad again.
They didn't get that good.
I mean, they got better than they were.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. Like, they're not really good. Yeah, I would say that, like, Obama's era, for as many faults as he had, and he had a lot, was a lot better than the George W. Bush era.
Absolutely, that's true.
And then all of a sudden we got Trump, and just, like, what the fuck are we doing? Yeah.
So I think 2030 is good. So then in that case, let me take you through our cast.
Okay.
Strange Days, 2030. Lenny Nero will be played by Stephen Yeun. Mace will be Jessica Nicole. Faith will be Cara Delevingne. Max will be Ethan Suplee. Philo Grant will be Wilmer Valderrama. The two cops will be Jimmy Simpson and Aaron Taylor Johnson. Jericho 1 will be 2K, baby! Iris will be played by Bess Rue. Tick will be Eugene Cordero. And then Strickland, the police commissioner, will be Jeffrey Wright. All of this will be written by Ava DuVernay and directed, once again, by Catherine Bigelow.
That sounds like a good Ideal remake.
Yeah, you gonna watch this movie?
I would watch that movie.
It might take me a couple tries, but I'll get through it.
see how bad it is.
So, Danny, thank you so much for being a guest. Plug all of your things.
Oh my God.
Plug your social medias and, other things you do.
Like the books you're pointing at?
Yeah.
Yeah, for anyone who can't see it. Yes, so I am I'm an author. I write a series called The Black Pages. By the time this podcast comes out, 3 books will be out, and then hopefully shortly after that, the 4th one as well. And that's largely it. If you look for my name on anywhere, on Barnes & Noble or Amazon or Audible or anything like that, you'll find my work. And yeah, I hope you like it. The elevator pitch for it is, it's about a young woman who has the ability to make herself fictional. And when she realizes those worlds are real, she starts trying to save all the nameless characters and stories that usually die or get lives ruined for the sake of advancing the plot.
Awesome.
So she does her own Ideal remake all the time.
Unrelated to anything else, have you heard of Jasper Fforde?
So, fun thing about that, this is am I allowed a bragging moment on this podcast?
Yeah.
All right. So, one of the scariest things that I ever did was having my books reviewed by Kirkus. Kirkus is this 80-something-year-old company. They are the strictest but fairest book reviewers in the land. They have the top book reviewers. They are the most credible book review site and magazine out there. And they're mainly for industry. They're not really for consumers. But that's part of why it's so scary to be reviewed by them. One of the things that happened was when people heard the plot of my series, they said, oh, yeah, that sounds a little bit like this. And I ended up reading it. I read The Air Affair, and it was actually not.
It's not. Like, the way you describe it is very different. Like,
yeah.
And because I have read The Air Affair as well. Like, I have read that whole series.
Yes. So the brag moment for me, I will say, is they, on both mine and The Air Affair, on Kirkus, when you see the you might also like it, we link to each other.
That makes sense.
But that said, Kirkus very distinctly and clearly liked my first book better than Air Affair.
Yeah, congratulations.
They gave a little bit of a to Air Affair, and then with mine, there was nothing but positive, and that is my slight flex. Although he sold way more books than I have, so maybe he gets to laugh.
He gets to be British.
He gets to be British, and I get.
To be fair, I'm a fan of Jasper Fforde. Like, I've read his books, but like his Air Affair books are not the ones I like the most. His nursery crime books are great, and then he has a book series where I think he ended up coming out with the second one, but I haven't read it yet, called Shades of Grey, that I just really, really like. But like he had to put it away for a really long time for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that makes me even more excited to dive into your books because I really love that premise.
Although to be fair, this might be the one thing that finally kills Kirkus's credibility.
No.
It's saying that my first book was better than his first book.
Well, if you want people to join the debate, what social media can they find you under?
Go to search for The Black Pages on Facebook. There's a Facebook page there. You can also find my Twitter. At the name of the character is what I use. It's at Alana Ruth Black.
Spell Alana.
ELANA.
And then Ruth and Black, I think we'll figure out.
Yes.
Alana Ruth Black.
Yes.
Cool.
Thanks for having me. My
pleasure. Thank you for being here. If you're interested in finding me on the internet, I am on Twitter at Sam Gasch, SAMGASCH. Or if you're more interested in following the podcast is also sort of me on Instagram at Ideal Remake, or on Twitter at Ideal Remake, or join us on Facebook, Ideal Remake or Ideal Remake Podcast. But the best thing you can do, and Danny, I'm sure you will concur, is to go online and leave a 5-star review. It really helps. People pay attention to that. It's good.
Or leave a 1-star review, and then people will go, "Oh my god, this was so bad." Don't do that.
Don't do that. Absolutely
I'm kidding
not.
Entirely. 5-star reviews, please.
How dare you? So, more reviews, please.
Yes, all the reviews.
So then I will leave you with this. What is your favorite quote from the movie Strange Days?
Besides gas is $3 a gallon?
Yeah.
It was an evocative move. It was one where it was gibberish, but I loved it. Was tell me, have you ever have you ever jacked in? Have you ever wire tripped? I loved that because it meant nothing, but you immediately knew what he was talking about. And it was a great way to like the way that it was set up was it was descriptive. And if you're world building with weird technology, you have to be able to say like, oh yeah, no, he got into my deck, and people will be like, okay, yeah, it's probably a computer thing. Yeah, that was a good line just for that reason, and it's probably not the best quote, but it was one that I thought was fun.
Good, love it.